Okay, so not really back. I'm not going to be diving off into this project like I have the last couple of builds. This is going to be generally, I'm going to be piddling, as they say, trying to fit this in between projects I have on my property here. That's what's going to take up most of my time. So if I get a couple of days on this project, a week, I'll just keep filming until something substantial starts to happen, and put it together and set the video whenever I get about 15-20 minutes worth of video. So it's probably not going to be every Friday like it has been with my other projects, because I'm not working on this full time. What it is a daily driver project for myself that I've been thinking about for a while. I had an El Camino a long time ago and I really enjoyed the car. Wanted to get back to that. I thought I'd do a twist on the El Camino, and body it from the greenhouse down in a 68 Charger sheet metal, and put it on an LX platform, either a Charger, a new Charger, kind of like my car, or like the ones that I just got done doing for both Don and Randy. But it proved not to be a doable thing. It's basically the measurements were not going to work out for that. It was I was making a lot of assumptions. Also, I thought I would get lucky like I did with those cars, but it's there's too many hurdles to do that. So I started to think about what I was going to do with the El Camino, because I got the El Camino. I got it way back when I was working on Don's car. In fact, Don brought it up from Alabama for me. It was a good one for sale down there, so I had him bring it, and that's what I got here. I'll turn you around so you can see that. Right here, I've already started stripping the El Camino down, and I had to make a decision what I was going to do, and I just kept going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. I thought about just doing an engine swap, putting an LS in it, and I started looking at the suspension. I was like, well, I don't want this old suspension. And one thing led to another, as it usually does with me. And somewhere along the line, I picked up this GTO, and I figured, I'll do a full body swap with this GTO. That was a bad move. This GTO, dimensionally, was not going to work out for a number of reasons. It's a whole lot wider than I thought it would be as far as between the pinch welds. In fact, it was the pinch welds that killed the Charger idea, because the LX platform, while I built a model car of it and everything matched up at the cow height as far as the width across here, I thought I was good to go. All I'd have to do is add Charger door skins and quarters, and I'd be on my way. But the distance between the pinch weld from here to there, which on my other Charger projects was almost perfect, because the old B-body Chryslers up here are narrow, but they sweep out at an angle. Well, if you take a look at this door jamb, you can see it goes straight down from this A-post right here. And the problem with that is that by the time you get down to the pinch weld, it was about 3.5 inches out. Well, then that created issues with the glass, and I'd have to keep the inner door of the El Camino, and that means that the door of the Charger would be somewhere around here, so that's an awfully wide door. And there were other issues. There was the track width. It was way too big. Tires would be sticking way out of the car, and then I'd have to do some crazy modifications to the front end of the Charger that wasn't going to make it look the way I want it to look. So I ran into a little bit of that with this GTO. I assumed it was a smaller car than it was, because I didn't have access to one to measure it up properly. And it was quite a little bit narrower overall, while the LX platform was about 7 inches wider at the pinch welds than this El Camino. This was only about 3 inches wider, which I felt, well, I can reconcile that. That's not going to be too bad. It's a shorter wheelbase, so I knew I was going to have to cut the platform and stretch it. I didn't think that was too big of an issue. I wasn't scared off yet. But then I found out a stumbling block, because I like to do plug and play. In other words, just cut the sheet metal off and, put the sheet metal back together and leave the operational part of the car as much intact as I can possibly do it, in order not to confuse the computers and have all the issues that you have when you start removing and replacing things like ABS modules and all that jazz. So the problem is this car was originally built in, actually these were built in Australia. They're called the Holden Monaro. The Holden was the General Motors branch in Australia. And in 2004 to 2006, they produced these cars for the American market as GTO. But what had to happen was it had to have a gas tank moved to a location that really kind of ruined the whole project for me. In other words, the Monaro was built in 2001, I believe, was first year, and the gas tank was underneath this trunk space over here. The American regulatory agencies said, no, you have to get that gas tank farther forward in the car. So they put the gas tank right above the tires here, right in the center here, just right behind the back seat and in front of the trunk. Well, I thought, well, somewhere along the line, I'll just figure a way to move it, because you're not going to have much of a bed here if I have a gas tank sticking up here, because the way the gas tank on that car is, it's a vertical tank. So dimensionally, it stood really high. It stands really high, I should say, off of the platform. It's actually up on top of the riser that goes up over the rear frame rail area. So the problem there is even if you make a tank that's got the same capacity, you won't be able to use the sending unit and the float and everything else that goes with that, because all of that stuff is meant for a very deep tank. And I kept going around and around, where could I put this gas tank to get it out of the way? And the only place I could think of was to cut a hole here through the floor and mount it underneath this area over here in the car. But that was just going to be hokey as heck, because I'd have to make a custom tank to fit that area. I could fit about 26 gallons in there actually, but it was going to be a kind of horsey, because you would have had no place to put anything in this vehicle behind the seats whatsoever, except this little tiny compartment on this side. So I didn't want that. That was probably the nail that went in the coffin for that, using the GTO as a platform. In the meantime, I started going through the GTO, trying to do this and that and figure out, because it's got about 114,000 miles on it. But somewhere along the line, some young guys got a hold of it and decided they wanted to street race this car, so they started doing all kinds of horsey stuff to it. The main thing they did was they cammed the engine. Then they rebuilt the transmission and put a 3500 stall in the transmission, which means that this thing gets about 14 miles to the gallon and generates a lot of heat, a lot of slippage in that transmission. Good for street racing and drag racing, I suppose, but not exactly a cruiser. And so also in the process of doing what they did to the car, they did everything in a kind of a method that, is very questionable. As I went through, I found things like all the clips going to the fuel rails and stuff like that, just everything, a bunch of little stuff missing, and they'd put a line lock, a valve in the ABS, which meant the ABS light was on all the time, and just a bunch of nonsense. And the steering wheel, when they replaced the transmission, these cars, you have to kind of drop the engine out of the bottom, so you have to take the steering rack and the whole cradle for the engine and drop it to the bottom. So what happens there is that when you put it back up, you better make sure that your steering wheel's in the right position. Well, they didn't. Steering wheel's cocked off to one side. There was a bunch of stuff that they said was wrong with it that was not wrong with it, and a bunch of stuff that wasn't supposed to be wrong with it that was wrong, like the airbag system. One of the belts was blown. The steering column, the clock spring was broken. They said that it was just a passenger airbag. It wasn't. It was So I'm going through one thing at a time, trying to get this car just back to running condition so that I could sell it. And I pretty much just stopped the. I asked them what the check engine light was about, and they said, "Oh, it's just a bad temperature sensor for the car." And it turns out it was a bad cam sensor. So now the car's sitting in here. I had to drag it in after I got it into neutral because it's stopped running at this point. So basically, I bought a pig in a poke, which happens, and so I decided to stop on this for now. But somewhere along the line, I'm going to have to get this back running and fix it up a little bit just to sell it. I have another idea for it, though, once I get it fixed up, if I still have enough energy to do it. So in the meantime, what I did was I decided I'm going to get, I had my heart set by this time on an LS1 engine swap. So I decided, well, I'll just get that LS1. And I went to Cleveland Power and Performance and got this one over here, which was about $6,000 for a 60,000 mile 1999 Z-28 engine, complete with all the harnesses and the steering column and everything you'd need to hook it. Gas tank, nice gas tank that would actually fit under the El Camino and everything. I thought, well, I'm set, man. I got this whole package here. I'm good to go. But I still needed, I didn't want to do a hybrid and use systems from the El Camino for the air conditioning and stuff like that, because that stuff is pretty archaic in the El Camino. They've got a compressor that's known for it's famous for its failure. It's called a pancake compressor. So I decided, well, you know what? Let me just go get a 99 Camaro shell, and it'll hopefully have some of the things that I need, and that's what I went and did. So this was only about $1,000 for this shell, but it's a pretty complete car. I mean, you could literally have just popped an engine in this thing and you'd have a complete car again. So I kind of feel bad about doing what I'm doing, but not really, because it has everything I need. Now I have double harnesses, but these harnesses, I have harnesses that I needed for headlights and taillights and all the accessories and stuff that weren't included with that engine harness that's attached to the LS motor that I got from Cleveland Power and Performance. And this also has everything I need for the HVAC system. So it has all the controls inside the car. It's got the dash is intact. So it's got, I needed a steering wheel. It's got a steering wheel with an airbag. It's got a radio. It's got everything here. Doesn't have a console, but this was a 4-speed car. But like I said, I've got a harness, complete harness for an automatic car to go with that engine. So it should just plug and play with that. So it's got a nice interior. It's not wet like most cars that are, sitting around. You open the door and it smells like it's been sitting for a while. This car's pretty dry, and kind of a nice interior for the year. At any rate, at this point, I am just stripping things down and seeing what's going on. I just got to the point where I was able to measure exactly from the pinch weld here to the other side, and there's only a 1/4 of an inch difference. So what I've decided to do, instead of trying to keep the full frame, which is something that I got hung up on, also keeping the full frame, that I'm going to basically make a unibody. I'm going to cut this body out, floor pans and everything, in order to drop it down on that Camaro. Now, of course, there's a 17-inch difference in the wheelbase, so I'll be cutting the pan in this car and moving this back so that it lines up with these wheel holes in the back. But on the upside, I've got rack and pinion steering, and I've got 4-wheel disc brakes on this car. So again, all the modern amenities. It's already set up exactly for, it's got the proper cradle for the LS1. I don't have to do any customization, which I don't even know where I would start with that old car. But so yeah, that's what I'm up to. There's a ton of things I haven't said or mentioned because of the fact that I've just been trying to make up my mind, really. But I've settled on this, and this is where I'm going to go forward with this. But I have some other things I have to do, like I said. So this project is going to take some time, and these videos are probably going to they're going to be stretched out quite a bit, maybe one a month, I don't know, whatever. And then we'll see how that all goes. All right, it's quite a bit later. Like I said, I'm working on different projects on the house. And so I've been working on also, in between things, stripping out the donor platform. And I got it pretty bare bones at this point. I'll turn you around here and let you take a look at it. As you know, this is a 99 Z-28 Camaro that I bought originally just for the HVAC system when I was just considering on just trying to mend everything into the El Camino as is, just doing a swap into the existing frame. But now I've decided to do the whole platform, because as with everything with modern cars, this one's got anti-lock brakes, which means it's got wheel speed sensors, and it's got the reluctor wheels inside there, so all of that stuff naturally talks to each other in the car. I'm not sure if this was a dual acting system, but yeah, like my truck, which was an early version of the anti-lock brakes, where you're able to just disconnect the anti-lock brake system, because it's just a conventional brake system without it, because it was the experimental stuff. GM didn't quite have it down quite right. I had it in my 99 S10 and it was pretty horrible. So I wish I could have known back then to disconnect it, because it was just get you in an accident as opposed to stopping you from having one. But at any rate, enough rambling about that. But bottom line is this was a 4-speed car, it was a manual car. I don't know if it was 4-speed or 5-speed. Truthfully, I don't know what they came with. But everything on the harness is pretty much identical, except a few items underneath the area where the clutch is. Obviously there's switches for the clutch and stuff like that hook up in there. But the harness that came with the engine over here is for an automatic transmission, and so being that's the case, I got to put that whole setup back into the car. And it is a pretty complete harness. I thought that we'd be missing certain things, but it's not. So I have to unwind it from the dash, which was a real nightmare to get this dash out because of how everything's attached. You practically have to drag the whole harness out with you. It's very difficult to unbuckle it, but you have to unhook the ductwork and everything. It's just there's no quick release for anything. Even the doors. Even on the older car here, when you get to the door jambs on this old car here, it's got these little boots that run the wires in. When you pull this out, there's a plug there. It plugs all the wiring in for the door, so when you disconnect the door, you don't have to dismantle the whole door. Well, this one does not. That one has it hardwired through that boot on both sides, so I had to disconnect everything inside the door, drag absolutely everything back through the body, and that's a dangly Christmas light nightmare right there. So a couple of challenges with this. Of course, it's much shorter. It's like 17 inches shorter. So I already knew we're going to have to cut this here and then stretch this platform, put a large frame connector under here. One thing that is kind of good is that this pan sits lower from the pinch weld than the pan on the El Camino, which means it's going to have to come up about 2 inches higher, which works out really well because this is about 2 inches lower than the existing dash in the El Camino. So by cutting in here, as you can see, this comes on a slope here. By cutting in here, this is actually a little bit wider than the El Camino. I think it's about 1/2 inch wider. But as you go down, as you can see, this ramps in. So actually about 2 inches down, it's almost exactly the perfect width. So that'll help to, get the width right inside there. The other thing is that this pan back here, I started moving the gas tanks further inboard on the cars, I guess on this model, and instead of having it back here, the very back of the car, it's up over top of the rear end. And while it's lower, much lower than the Pontiac GTO, which I told you, when that one, they actually have the gas tanks stacked on top of a pan that's on top of the rear axle. This is by bringing this pan up 2 inches. It's already a little bit high. I think it's about an inch higher than what would go in over the axle in this area over here. So I was already going to have to do some alterations with that, but seeing as I'm taking it up, it'll be a full 3 inches higher than that bed. I've decided what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this whole section out here and I'm going to move it back behind the axle. It's about 2 feet front to rear, and measuring the location, there's about 3 feet to the back of the El Camino, so I should have plenty of room in there to move the gas tank back and then down lower to get it behind the axle as opposed to riding on top of the axle. I have to lengthen all the fuel lines and everything anyway, so that'll be part of that fun. But I've got this mess going on now, which is always, you know, where do you put all this stuff, and then you forget where you put it all. At any rate, that's what I got going on so far. Incidentally, as you know, normally I wouldn't want to take all the wiring out and all of that stuff out because it just makes for a bigger, longer job, and there's, you know, for me, a chance of forgetting where anything goes. But this is going to make it a little bit easier to mend these two platforms together because it's just going to be sheet metal. I won't have to worry about covering things with foil, and I won't have to worry about covering things with welding blankets. I can just go straight ahead and just weld it up without having to be constantly aware of setting something on fire, as with my car and the last 3 builds, which pretty much had all the wiring and everything still in the car when I was working on them, which was always a little bit sketchy. But anyway, that's what happens when you're not real super knowledgeable about a particular platform you're working on. This is a new one for me here anyway, but I just thought I'd mention that. Here's something interesting. You know, I'm always thinking, am I really going to compromise this El Camino? Because it's a full frame car, truck, whatever you want to call it, and turning it into unibody, which in other words, all of this will be welded directly to that body. It won't be a separate chassis and body situation. But here's both cars. This one is the Camaro, 99 Camaro, sitting on 4 jack stands right now. Now I understand I will be compromise it when I cut it, but hopefully I'll put it back, enough integrity back into the frame rails and everything to make it stout. At any rate, here's the Camaro, and I'll just take it and shake it here, which basically I'm leaning on it and there's not a lot happening here. It's just pretty stout because all of these, the shock tower and all of these wheel housings here are all welded to the firewall. All right, and come over here, and of course I have the aid of the engine being in here, but it's not really a big problem for me to wobble this whole thing. And you can see it's just mounted at the body right here to this part of the frame rail. So from this point forward, the only thing that's really stiffening up this car in its eventual finished state will be the radiator core support bolted to the fenders, and the fenders bolted to the firewall. The inner wheel tubs and everything are plastic. On this car, they're steel, but on the later G bodies, they're plastic. So there's not a lot of structural integrity in just having it on a frame. At least on this particular car, there isn't. All right, so this is where we're at right now. I've got the whole El Camino body removed from the chassis, and I'm starting to cut it apart and get the floor pan and the firewall out. But anyway, I got it on these sawhorses. They're actually not sawhorses, I guess. They're steel. Got them out of an old house one time, and they come in handy every once in a while. At any rate, so we're there with that, and we're there with that, and I moved the Pontiac back outside after taking the intake manifold off and cleaning up the intake ports that were covered with oil because they cammed the motor, but they didn't vent the crankcase to atmosphere, so it was sucking oil into the engine a little bit. And no big harm, but just shows that they were just doing one thing without covering their bases on the other things. Put new seals on the intake manifold, put in new fuel injectors, put in a new map sensor, put in a new crank sensor, or cam sensors I should say, not crank sensor, cam sensor, and figured I was good to go, but starter's fried. So there you have it. So I pushed it back outside. That's for another day to dink around with. And this is the Camino chassis setting out here. It's pretty much intact. I just wanted to show you what the frame actually looks like. It's just a C-channel, as you can see right there. It's about 4 inches tall, but it's pretty flexible. Anyway, don't know what I'm going to do with this. Anybody's got an El Camino that they got a bad frame on, I guess I could sell it to them, but we'll see. My luck with selling things is not very good. At any rate, that's where I'm going to wrap this up. That should be enough jibber jabbering for you all for now. And I'll see you whenever I get around to collecting up another bunch of video. It might be a month from now, who knows, but that's where I'm at right now. I'll see you on the next one.